Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. That is Zephaniah 3, verse 17. I am your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, where you will find encouragement, resources, and community. As a mom of 8, 5 through adoption, including 2 young adults, both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome when they were little, now in their 20s, and they're still living home. I understand the difficulties faced when raising children with trauma and prenatal exposure to substances. I've been on this journey for 25 years. I'm still parenting. And I have to say, parenting adult kids is even more challenging than parenting littles, believe it or not. But still on the journey, so let's walk it together, shall we? In fact, I want to share some upcoming online workshops to better equip you for your parenting journey. I am offering a 1-hour free workshop called From Frustration to Understanding, Brain-Based Strategies for Parenting Children Impacted by Trauma and Prenatal Exposure. And this free workshop will be on June 9th, so right around the corner. Don't wait, sign up now. It is going to be offered at noon Eastern time, and it's just 1 hour. Then on June 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern, I am doing Wired Differently. It's a 3-hour deep dive into FASD, how it impacts the brain during development, what the symptoms are, primary, secondary, tertiary, and how do we parent? What do we need in our toolkit? This is, many of us learned a whole new set of parenting tools when we learned about trauma and we're doing connected parenting, and we definitely need those tools. But if you're parenting a child who was prenatally exposed to substances, it is next level. It's much more complex. And so we have some additional tools that will be very helpful on your journey. And honestly, the tools that I offer, it's called the neurobehavioral model. This model of understanding how the brain works and applying individual based on your child's needs, accommodations and supports based on what their symptoms are and what they need. Whether your child has trauma and no prenatal substance exposure, or maybe your child has a diagnosis of ADHD or autism, or maybe on the FASD spectrum, or ODD or RAD, or how our kids get that whole alphabet soup of diagnoses. This workshop will help you parent your child, whether they have that whole alphabet soup or just some of the above. This is definitely a workshop that you will want to take the time to do. It's 3 hours, it's live, and it will be well worth your while. So again, that is June 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern time, Wired Differently. There is a link in the show notes that will take you to my website where you can register for online workshops and see what else may be available there that you'd be interested in. Another great resource for your parenting journey is my newest book, Soul Care Saturday, 52 Devotions for Foster and Adoptive Moms. And oh my goodness, it's available on Amazon. And the amazing Jamie Finn of Foster the Family wrote the foreword. She was so kind and generous. And this devotional is perfect. Written by an adoptive mom for adopted moms, and we're busy. So it's 52 devotions. I know when I do a devotional book, I get overwhelmed when there's 30 or 31 or 365 or 60, whatever. Um, because if inevitably I will miss a day or two or a week or whatever. And then when I get back to it, I feel behind and I don't like that stress. So I never finish it. So this is 52. So it's one a week, and there's enough there if you want to sort of, meditate on it and chew on it throughout the whole week. But it's definitely doable for us. And it's got the scripture, it's got the devotional story piece that's specifically for us parents on this journey. And it's got a breath prayer that you can practice praying each week, additional scriptures to dive into throughout the week, and a journaling page for each week. So it's also filled with gorgeous illustrations. If you're watching the video version of this podcast right now on our YouTube channel, if you look over my shoulder, you will see the beautiful Adirondack mountains. Well, you don't see mountains, you see the lake behind me and trees. So I spend a lot of time up in the Adirondack Mountains. It is my place for soul care. So the illustrations all throughout the book really are inspired by the beautiful scenery up here in the mountains. And the cover of the book was the picture for the cover of the book was taken on the dock behind me, not on purpose. My daughter-in-law took some pictures, and when I came across that picture that she took of actually me sitting on the dock, and from behind, so you can't really tell it's me, when I was sending pictures to our cover designer to just show her these are the kind of things that I want reflected in this book, she actually used the picture for the cover, which I was shocked. So fun fact, but it is beautiful. It is designed to minister to your heart and refresh your spirit, using God's word to restore your soul. So I hope that you will take the time to get a copy. And like I said, you can find it on Amazon. Now, I'd love to connect with you in person, and I am booking now for my 2026 calendar. And my next public speaking engagement will be in September at the Christian Alliance for Orphans Summit in Atlanta, Georgia. That is September 23rd through 25th. On the heels of that, I'll be flying into DC for the FASD United Affiliates Impact Week. That's not really a place where you're going to go to hear me speak or anything, but I will be there. And then in October, I will be at Replanted in Chicago, October 15th through 17th. So those are some opportunities that you can, if you attend any of those conferences, and I highly recommend that you get to a conference, get to a retreat. But I have room in my calendar. So if your church has a foster and adoption ministry and you want to bring me in for a weekend or a Saturday, you want some training on FASD in person, some soul care conversation, all of the above I can speak on, certainly. So whatever event you are planning, whether it's a retreat, whether it's a conference, whether you want to just schedule to bring me in, I just scheduled for September. I will be doing an online where I will be kind of zoomed into a large church foster and adoption ministry group in Arkansas. So we can certainly work out things like that. So there's time in my calendar for you. So reach out to me. My email is in the show notes below. You can contact me directly if you're interested in having me come. Now, today, I'm super excited to have a guest with us. I always love it when we bring on a fellow foster or adoptive mom. I love to have those conversations, like we're all just sitting around the table with our cup of coffee and having a chat about what we're passionate about, what God has called us to do. So today we have Brandy McCombs. Brandy is a follower of Christ, a wife, an adoptive mother, a mom to 3 biological sons. She serves as a college professor with a PhD focused on the intersection of the brain and high-level stress. Definitely a topic we need to dive into. So please welcome to the show, Brandy McCombs. Hey, Brandy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
I'm excited to have you. I loved hearing from you. You reached out to me. You are a listener of the podcast, which always blesses me when I hear from a listener. But thrilled to have you here because you are an expert, not just an adoptive mom, but an expert on trauma and the brain. So we're going to get to all of that, but I'd love to hear your family's adoption story. So I know you have three bio sons. You said you're a boy mom.
Yes, I
What?
am a boy mom, true and true. I've told many people I used to, well, and they're older now, but I live in a locker room. That is me.
I can relate because I'm down to just boys at my house. So
Yes,
I get that, the smell and all. So,
we love the smells.
yes. So, but what led you and your husband to pursue adoption?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a very unique family. We have twins to start us off
Oh,
with, and
wow.
I know, so that's just crazy. They're the 16th set in my husband's family, so we kind of were hoping we were going to have twins, and they're 26 now. And then we have a singleton who's 21. Those are my bios. And so when the twins, we were putting it on the calendar, we planned our family. We're like, this is great. And then we thought we were done, tied with a bow, family of four, great dinner reservations, table of four. It's a perfect number. And then our family expanded by a singleton, and I was so grateful for that pregnancy. It was holding one baby boy after holding and navigating two baby boys. I was like, this is the dream. And so I thought we were done. We could not carry any more pregnancies. And so we thought we've got our twins, and they were 7 at the time. And we have our 2-year old, and he was a vivacious 2-year old. He was very active, and we thought we were like, this was our family of five. Great. And then my heart just was turned upside down. And I would love to say it was a point, time, and place that I could say, this is what happened, but it was very odd. We go out to dinner, and they would ask, how many's in your party? And I would say six. My husband would look at me and it's like, you need more sleep. There's five of us. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm saying six. And I would be starting to read different books. I would start turning on a television show, and it was adoption,
Mhm.
adoption. I was like, okay, God, you're speaking, like, please, like, what is going on? And I just started to feel this tug on my heart that our family was incomplete. And so I brought that conversation to my husband, and my husband was a full-time pastor at the time. I think he was working 70, 75 hours a week. And he looked at me, and I was homeschooling at the time. And he was like, you are crazy. Like, look at our life. We are juggling so much. And so I did what any good Christian woman would do. I called all my best friends and said, you just need to pray for my husband that he hears from God, because I know I'm hearing from God. Like, there's not a
Yep.
disconnect. I know I'm in the right. And then it took another 2 years, and we were actually on a family mission trip, and we were in Wyoming loading up on a 15-passenger van to make a very long drive. And he had been reading in James that morning, and he looked at me, and I was having a cranky attitude that morning. It was at the tail end of our mission trip, and we had probably about 25 on that mission trip, ages 4 to 70. It was a very diverse group, and it was a great mission trip. I was just exhausted. And earlier in the James chapter, it talks about your attitude. And he
Mhm.
said, I've been reading in James, and I thought, he is like, I get it. We can have good heart-to-heart conversations, and we can call each other out. But are you seriously going to call me out of my attitude right now? I was like, the hair is a real thing. Like, I was about ready to be like, okay, come on, buddy. And he goes, we need to adopt. We can not
Mhm.
only be hearers of the words, we've got to be doers of the word. And I said, okay. And so we started the paperwork through our state agency. We were going to go local. And super long story short, fast forward a year later, we could not get approved for anybody. It was like literally God kept closing every single door. And I just was for certain that we would get a little girl, because if I could get to fill out the paperwork, and I've got three boys, I'm gonna get a girl. Like, I'm gonna be this girl mom finally. And God said, yeah, no, you need this little baby boy. And he is 3 months old. And it was through a private adoption. I got the phone call on Wednesday. We met him on Saturday, and he was in my arms on Monday. And now, 15 years later, he is our grand finale with fireworks,
Wow.
to say the least.
Yeah. And I love how the Lord works it all out, even when we're not really, because my husband and I were not on we had three bios.
Mhm.
We did have two sons and a daughter, but we did not have any aspirations to become
Yeah.
foster or adoptive parents. Believers loved the Lord, but then
Yeah.
the Lord sort of, I always say he snuck us in the back door without us knowing what door he was opening. He placed a little girl who was a relative into our family. So of course we said yes to her. We felt like, of course, of course we are a family. She needs a
Right.
family. She was 8 years old and she came. We knew nothing about anything, didn't know anything about trauma, didn't know, we just knew traditional parenting, which was not working well with her all of those years. And we did formally adopt
Right.
her, when she was a young teen. But then the Lord got a hold of our hearts and then led us to an international adoption where our next four came through. So, he's got a plan and he
He
gets us
does.
there one way or the other. My husband was pretty much the same way. When I approached him about and it was almost a year of me and the Lord going back and
Hmm.
forth about international adoption. Because at first I was like, I don't know about that. And then when I was all in and finally presented it to my husband, he was like, oh, yeah, maybe one day we'll do that. Maybe when
Right.
all of our other kids. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure the Lord wants us to do it now. So, I tell the whole story because I wrote our story in my book, Orphans No More. But, the Lord did eventually get through to him, but I had to be quiet for a long time. But I did the same thing. I had everybody praying.
Oh, I had
Everybody.
everybody praying, and I had to literally bite my tongue
Mhm.
because God kept me in check, and I learned so
Yeah.
much through that. And through my first two pregnancies, I was gifted pregnancy journals. And so when I knew we were going to adopt, I went and bought a journal specifically for that, but I wasn't released to start writing in it. And I just kept it safe. And we were at a women's conference, and God said, start writing in that journal. And I was like, are we sure? And I didn't say anything to my husband, but I just started writing like I was already pregnant. Like you are out there. I don't know your circumstances, but I'm just going to start praying for your biological situation. And then that was in February. It was in July when my husband said, let's adopt. And so I call that my pregnancy journal because I was pregnant.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Love how the Lord works it out. And I
Oh, it's
remember
amazing.
very, very clearly, knowing that I'm not the Holy Spirit. My husband doesn't need to hear from me because I could probably talk him into anything.
Oh,
But
yeah.
knowing,
I mean,
yeah,
come on, look at Eve. I mean, that's
yeah,
what I always tell women. We can manipulate and we have to keep that in check.
yeah,
And I needed it to be from God because obviously this isn't hey, let's go on a mission trip, we'll be done. This is a lifetime
yeah,
commitment. We are growing our family
yeah,
and we are committing, and we're committing our older children to
yes.
this commitment as well. I mean, they are becoming siblings. And at the time, I had no idea what we were doing. And it's a good thing I didn't know because I couldn't comprehend and I didn't have the knowledge or the skill set. But truly, when we are entering in the foster and adoptive world, it's a commitment.
Yeah. And lifelong and affects our marriages, our children, and extended family, our friendship,
Relationships, the friendship,
everything.
yes, all
Yes,
of
it's
it.
transformed. So true. So, now your son was 3 months old, you said, when he joined
Three
the.
months old, yes.
So, what was that like bringing him home into your family?
So again, we were homeschooling at the time, and we were very fortunate because he was able to be with me literally 24/7. And so I did the skin to skin to where I was able to wear a sports bra, attach him, do like the whole Moby wrap, and that really helped the attachment. My older three boys, they were smitten with him. I mean, they knew immediately that that was their brother. And it just because had a very flexible schedule because it was in August, and so we started the school year. And so it was very conducive to him creating a bond within our family. And he just, it literally was our missing puzzle piece. And it just, the initials, like that he was already, his name aligned with our other son and our other two boys, they aligned. There were just so many little gifts from God along the way that I held to as promises because it took us a long time for the finalization of the adoption. And there were some rocky roads, but that's for a whole other story. But there were some challenges, and he was a good baby. Literally, the only sign of I don't even want to say, I'll just say developmental interruption. That's how I'll phrase it. Any sign of developmental interruption was his suck, swallow, breathe, and eating. If we fed him 3 ounces, maybe 5 ounces would come out. So, like, if we fed him, we had beach towels, and I'm not like exaggerating. We literally said, okay, who wants to feed our son? And we'd give out beach towels. And because, like, if you were going to set up camp to do a bottle, you needed to be protected because some days everything would stay, and then some days stuff would come out. That was our only hiccup. Other than that, everything was on developmental timeline. And it was until he turned 3 when I was like, oh, okay, we're into uncharted waters. And that's when I started pursuing extra education, started pursuing other individuals and professionals of who's navigated foster and adoptive, and just trying to gain more knowledge in my personal toolbox because even though I had 3 biological boys, and again, I'm a boy mom. Like, I got this figured out. I know how to put on mascara in the middle of a Nerf fight. I have done that before. Like, I know boys. And I was like, this is a different game. I need help. And so it started off precious, wonderful, and it still is precious, wonderful. There's just some detours we take along the way.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's so common with our kids who come in through adoption and foster care. And so you're a professional, a college professor, in
Mhm.
fact.
Yes.
Were you equipped for the behaviors and challenges you faced?
So my at the time, again, besides being a mom of 3 boys, I had a bachelor's degree in psychology and I have a bachelor's degree in elementary ed. So I thought I was, and by the time he turned 3, we knew he needed to be in, I wanted him more in a social setting. So our other boys, I was able to stay at home for much longer with them. I was like, we need to put him into a preschool. And so next best thing to being a stay-at-home mom is working in the school that your children go to. So that's what I did. I pivoted my career, and at that time, our older boys were already in public, and so it worked out perfect. And so when I went back into the classroom, I was noticing because I was at a high poverty Title I school, and I could see the demographic of the students and the children that I was also navigating in the classroom. I was starting to see that I was equipped. However, I was not fully equipped, and that research was quickly evolving because this was in 2014, 2015. And Dr. Barbara Sorrells, she's in our state and she is a leading expert in childhood trauma. And she was actually partnered with us. Her name was given to us back when we were navigating some personal hiccups to the adoption. And then she was very gracious to take me under her wing to like just say, hey, let me help you and let me show you, maybe think about this for brain development, think about this, because we were taking it on from a personal standpoint. But then as I was talking to colleagues within education, that's when I took a step back and got out of my own personal world and said, oh, teachers, we're all flailing right now. Our society is shifting. We need more tools. And that's when I was like, I quickly got into my master's program and then I just kept going for my PhD.
Wow. So I want to get deeper into that in a moment, but so you said your son is now 15.
15.
Wow. So how is he doing?
He is just he's a joy. So I tell people he is a Labrador puppy because Labrador puppies are fun. They will bounce. They are the life of the party. Like, they'll cuddle with you. And then they might be chewing on your house within 5 minutes. And some people love, like, they are lab owners. Me and my husband, we are lab, like, we can do labs. Other people are like, that's cute for about 5 minutes. Can you give me some space? He is very sociable. We just had Teacher Appreciation Week and got to just go up and love on all of the staff and the faculty, and just to get to hear the stories within his school of he remembers people's names. He can build relationships. We are big in missions, and so we go over to Ghana and Nigeria. And the last time we were in Ghana, he got to stand up in front of a school of, I think it was 300, and he got to share his testimony.
Mm.
He thrives in Africa. Personally, I think it's the no schedules because their schedule is literally, it's fluid. There's the sun. Let's go do this. We're very limited on electronics here in the house. He doesn't have a cell phone, so he might be the only 15-year-old that doesn't have a cell phone. It doesn't bother him. He loves to fish. He loves to be outside. We're big in, we're not really big into nature, but we're big into supporting him to be outside because we just, we know that connecting piece with nature. Academics, it's a different story. I'm having to learn a lot of, even though I am a college professor in education, I need to be able to be supportive of my son. And I've never placed that expectation on any of my children to be, top scholar. Everybody's on their own journey. And I've always respected everybody's ability. I just like to go to the library. I like to learn. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea. But it has been very humbling that we've navigated ineligibility. We've navigated referrals. We've navigated all of this. And when I'm emailing school support staff and there's my credentials at the bottom of the email, and I'm just being very transparent, maybe another listener will be like, I get this. It's humbling because you're supposed to be the expert, air quotes, in that field. And one of the challenges that he is facing is academics, because again, we have this social expectation and it's all set by the DOB, the date of birth. So by 15, this is what skills you should already mastered in English language arts. This is the skill set you should already mastered in algebra. And it's just taken him a little bit longer. And so we're going to navigate that, and we're going to take off our chunks of information and process it at the time and at the rate that we can. But socially, he is doing great. Impulsivity, we navigate that. We're navigating that a lot. And again, back to that DOB, we're having to have those really hard conversations of society sees you as a 15-year-old male. And what does that look like? And another caveat, he has darker skin than me. He does not mirror my paleness with freckles. So not only does society see him as a 15-year-old male, he's a 15-year-old Black male. And so there's that expectation of, well, you should know better. And so that's hard to explain that to a Labrador puppy when they're ready to have a party and ready to play, but we got to really clue into what's going on around us socially, and we may not be cluing into that. So we may think we're playing a practical joke and think it's really funny. It's not longer a practical joke when you're 15. Like maybe when you were 11 and 12, that was funny. Now's not the time. And that's been our biggest challenge here lately.
Yeah, Brandy. So some of the stuff that you're describing, clearly could be trauma related. We see that a lot in adoption and foster care. Do you know, is like fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, FASD, a part of your story?
In my opinion, it is. We haven't had a clinical discussion with this pediatrician. Now that I'm getting more puzzle pieces, and these have been recent puzzle pieces that have come into play, and not only through research, obviously through your podcast, and through digging, that private investigating that I've been doing, I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And it's starting to give me such peace because, again, my education brain of understanding childhood trauma and ADHD, which he has been diagnosed ADHD, I was like, there's something missing. Like, I just don't feel like that's the peg that's getting the job done. And so now, within the last 6 months of me researching FASD, now I'm starting to go, okay, there's another puzzle piece, and this one's really fitting.
Yeah, because it's that, they're all on their own developmental timeline, and people with FASD tend to be younger, like, they're not as far along according to what their birthday age, their DOB is, as you said. Very, very common, the impulsivity, all of those things. So, and those symptoms can be even from trauma.
Right.
A lot of our kids have all of the above, and it can make it really challenging to navigate, but you're pursuing it. And I know that the support for your son, that'll be wonderful, and he'll really thrive with that.
I hope so.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond, invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community.
So, Brandy, let's talk about the science of connection. Would you share with us how trauma impacts the brain and how we can foster healing?
Yes, absolutely. And what's exciting is just like how our research has changed so much and it's been evolving. If you're familiar with childhood trauma, the 1997 ACE study is like the pivotal, okay, this is what we all know where that is. And it's that was the beginning marker of bringing the discussion to the table of children really aren't resilient. And what's going on pre-utero, in utero, post-utero really does affect the brain connectivity, the brain development, and long-term living, learning, social, emotional, even physical development. And so basically what we are understanding right now, and again, it's all evolving based upon our medical technology advancements and just more social understanding, the social dynamics of like poverty and racism and bullying, things like that. But basically what's going on is obviously we know there is the complex development of the brain in utero. I know you've mentioned that on your show multiple times. And I think there was even a guest that said like it'd be a miracle that any of us even get out of the womb with a full functioning brain. And that's true. And so we can understand, and because we are believers, we just see only God puts that all together. So with that being said, when a woman is in even pre-conception and then specifically during the full-term pregnancy, when there's high levels of stress, and I'm not talking like I'm running late to work and oh my goodness, I locked my keys in my car. We're talking domestic violence, high levels of poverty, lack of emotional support, lack of just a unit to be able to be dependent upon. Our cortisol levels get high, and cortisol is that natural chemical in our body that literally, when we are stressed out, it's getting released in our body. And the best way to explain this when you've got a little baby in utero, it's basically putting that baby in a pressure cooker. And so the first part of the brain that's getting developed is, I always tell my undergrads, put their hand at the base of their skull. That's like your brain stem. And we need that reptilian part of our brain because that keeps us safe. It keeps us from knowing, do I need to fight? Do I need to flight? Do I need to freeze? Do I need to please this person, fawn? What do I need to do? So when mom's cortisol levels are extremely high, that part of that brain is getting truly overdeveloped. And so when we have the full part of the brains getting developed, and then again, also we think of the prefrontal cortex, which is, again, I always tell my undergrads, think of it like a very large sticky note right here. It takes in the information and it lets you know, okay, you already know this. Let's attach that sticky note over here and file it and connect it. Or, whoop, we don't know this. This is new information. We need to hold on to this. Or you can hold on to this information for about 10 minutes and then you can throw it away. But your prefrontal cortex is like the gatekeeper of understanding and processing a bunch of information. Well, unfortunately, and that's just one example of high levels of stress with cortisol. So that's not even bringing into drug use, alcohol use, malnutrition, not being able to even eat just prenatal vitamins. We're just thinking of just one simple aspect of it. So when we have those interruptions, not only could that have the statistical opportunity to interrupt the physical development of the brain, but it also alters, just like what you're saying, the overall connectivity. And we may not see it right when they're born. Like whenever I was sharing about my son, what I was noticing at age 3 was the heavier fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, versus I was thinking there should be more processing. There should be more decision making going on. And that's where I was starting to see the disconnect. And so one of the biggest things with when kiddos experience high levels of trauma, And we can also lean into maybe an absence of a parent, maybe through incarceration, abandonment, divorce. Again, we know the typical ACEs, but as we're learning, community safety, neighborhood safety, community violence, racism, bullying, when those type of external factors are also affecting the cortisol levels even within the child. So now let's go post utero. So let's say the child is 3, 5, 7 years age, and he or she is experiencing these outside stressors. Now again, that part of their brain has been overstimulated, overworked, and the prefrontal cortex has been understimulated, underworked, and then that's what we heavily rely on children, especially students, to use specifically in a learning environment.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating because I remember when I began learning about trauma and learning this with the cortisol level. I can't remember
Mhm.
who did the study. You may be very familiar with this. I've lost it, but I remember learning about there was a study where I think it was women who were pregnant who were corporate executives, like Fortune 500
Mhm.
companies that had, high stress jobs. And so they were part of a study where their cortisol levels were tested throughout pregnancy. And then when their babies were born, I think they used, the urine in the diapers, right? And
Yes.
the cortisol levels in the newborn babies matched those
Yes.
extremely high cortisol levels in the birth mom. And then even several months out, the baby's cortisol
Mhm.
levels were really high. So that stood with me for so long because
It's fascinating because we even know now 3 months prior to conception. So
I,
let's say 3 months prior to conception, there is a woman who's in a severe domestic violence situation, and like just her cortisol levels are high. And then 3 months she's safe, but now she's with maybe a new partner, she conceives, and now she's getting on track. Those 3 months prior to conception could still, those cortisol levels still stay in her system, and they still have that long lasting effect to be placing that in utero as like I described, like as a pressure cooker. And this is again why prenatal care and just society education, just informing our society to understand how there are so many factors of whether it be like, and we think we want women to achieve, we want everybody to achieve, and having those high power jobs and being able to do that. But there's a limit to what our bodies can actually take, and there's a healthy balance. And it's not about just saying, nope, we can't do that. It's just, again, understanding the levels of cortisol, understanding the chemical effect, and then being able to navigate that and to being able to have some boundaries professionally and personally to set that pregnancy and that child up for success.
yeah, and it makes me think of our children who come to us through foster care, through adoption. It makes sense that there's going to be moms who are under stress because they could be moms who,
100%.
I'm not going to be able to parent. I'm going to have to make a parenting,
Yeah.
an adoption plan or what is going to happen, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of those unknowns. So even those kind of stressors and then all of the environmental ones that you mentioned that we might not even think of, all of that plays a role. And then ultimately we see that overdeveloped brainstem and the underdeveloped executive function. I always call that the
Yes.
boss of the brain. It's that last part to get
Hmm.
developed. And then especially when alcohol is introduced in utero, the whole scaffolding is off. And by the time
It's
you get
all
to the top,
changes.
yeah, so many of these things come together and it's not just one thing often that affects our children. It's multiple things that are not optimal. So eye-opening. And our listeners to kind of like pivot a little bit, primarily foster and adoptive parents, as you know, and we're
Hmm.
navigating those big behaviors, whether they're because of the high cortisol, the fight, flight, or freeze
Yep.
response. So, Brandy, would you share with us how we can move from behavior management? Because a lot of us are stuck in behavior management. Like, how do I get this kid to
Yes.
stop this? How do I get them to do the thing I want? Like, it just
Hmm.
seems like every day we're just trying to manage behaviors. Um,
100%.
and then you call it heart-based support. So,
Yes.
tell
Okay. So this I was behavior management because again, I had my bachelor's in education, and all education is basically basing the state standards, the trajectory, everything based upon a typical developed child. So again, all of our educational theories, Piaget, Erickson, all of them, it's all based upon a child who develops like a calendar. By this date, they should be doing this. By this date, they should be doing this. Yes, there's a little giveaway, but this is our trajectory. And so let's set up our education system based upon that. So that's what I was familiar with. That's what I knew. And yes, in our bachelor's, yes, we have like exceptional child and we'll have the special education, but as a typical gen ed teacher, that's what I knew. And that's what my children, my biological children, I wasn't drinking alcohol pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy. I didn't have high levels of stress. I was in a very safe relationship. I had a very nutritious diet. And so my three biological children are textbook children. They literally were following along. And then when my adoptive son came along, that's when I was like, oh, my behavior management doesn't work. Like, for example, as what you called it, traditional parenting, my traditional parenting is not working. And so that's where when we go to a heart-based perspective, we as the parent and we as the educators are accepting the fact this child is on a unique developmental trajectory. Not wrong, not wrong at all. And that's where I always try to teach my undergrads and when I do parenting conferences, it's different. It's unique to them. Different is not bad. Different is not wrong. Unique is not wrong. Unique is not bad. This is their personal story. And when we can take it into perspective, and it is trauma, drug, alcohol, the case in point is we're here now. And this is what we're navigating. It's not by choice. My son wakes up in the morning and thinks, you know what? How many things can I do wrong just to cause chaos in this house? I know my mom's going to tell me to go do XYZ, but I'm going to do MNOP. So how
Mhm.
many things can I do that? I know his heart. He is not waking up in the morning thinking that. I believe that with my whole heart and soul. And I would venture to say every child is not thinking that when they're waking up. They're kids. They literally want to enjoy the world. And unfortunately, what's happened prior to that moment is getting in the way. And so I believe there's a shift in managing behavior and saying, you know what? We're going to navigate this different. We're going to
Mhm.
take into account this child's unique story, even prior to conception, in utero, and then post utero. And even if, as a foster and adoptive parent, we're not going to know all the details. You know what, though? Because that child's in a foster and adoptive situation, we know there are details. So
Right.
already, just that alone, we know there were details. To the extent we may never know, but we know there were details. So right there alone to me gives me enough validity and enough proof that I need to approach this in a different way. Now, me as the parent 15 years ago, I didn't know that. And now I do know that. And now I can hopefully walk alongside other parents to say, let's do this together. Let me share with you that type of parenting. In my world, I was getting frustrated. You may not, but in my world, that wasn't working. And in my world, I had to pivot different because he's on a different path. And I want to support his unique development trajectory.
Yeah, I love that because that very much describes. I know because I was the same way when our first daughter came through adoption, the kinship, and I had the traditional parenting. I had,
Yeah,
that down, and so we applied that, and it didn't work, and it was just constant frustration, and it really prevented good connection because I was so focused all the time on behavior and consequences and disciplines and all of that that it was very, very exhausting. And it was years later after we had adopted our four children through, from Ukraine that I finally learned and I finally found a copy of, you may be familiar with The Connected Child, Dr. Karen.
yes.
So when I began to read that book, I was like, oh wow,
Oh,
this is my daughter that I didn't even think about in the in that from the
right.
perspective of trauma. And this that was I had done all of those things wrong. And I can say now she's 35, going to be 36 this summer, and we have a good relationship now, but she was in her 20s when I really began to intentionally apply those connecting principles with her. And even when our kids are grown up and out of the house and you're not seeing them all the time, it still works when you apply that.
Yes, it does.
And then with our younger kid, with our Ukrainian kids, we were applying those connection principles. And then when I began to learn about FASD and the neurobehavioral model, it's very much, it builds on that because it's understanding this child's brain works differently. They want to do well. Their
They
brain is
do.
sort of working against them. So how can we support them and help them? So a lot of it, and I like that description of heart-based support because I love
Mhm.
my son and I recognize he
Yes.
needs this support to be successful, and so we provide that. So I love that heart-based support phrase because I think that's exactly what it is, and it's exactly what our kids need. Um, what about the role that faith plays? You've talked about that a little bit,
Yes.
but how can we navigate this unique parenting journey through the Christian lens?
That's a great question. So, my husband, like I said, he is a pastor, and we've always been in the church. And so the church is just part of our life. He is bivocational now. When our adoptive son was 3, we both knew we needed to shift. And so we did more of a missionary lifestyle of he wanted to become bivocational, have a job outside of the church. I wanted to get outside of the church as well. And that way we would basically be among people who are what we would say is maybe non-church people or non-Christians. And so we've always been rooted in the church. And so we've always had the support of the church. Our faith within our personal walks with God have literally been the fuel for our parenting, not only with our 3 bios. And then again, now, like I said, our olders are 26 and both of them are married. I'm getting ready to be a mumsy and we're expecting our first grandchild. And I lean heavily on my walk with God, navigating adult children, because I want to be loving and support. I don't want to be that overbearing sitcom mom that they're going to have a stand-up comedy routine about, but I don't want to be so far distanced that they're like, where is she? So finding that healthy balance, I lean heavily on God. When we're dealing and navigating and getting the privilege to parent a child who's on a very unique trajectory, if we don't have a source of hope and a
Mhm.
source of joy, I don't know how anybody can do it. And it's just, to me, the math doesn't math, because in my world, I was a believer and I was a follower of Christ prior to our desire to adopt, and even prior to my decision to be a mom and to parent. However, because of the complexity and the unexpectedness of what worked yesterday, guess what? Surprise, not going to work today. And just that inconsistency, my personal faith and my action and activity within the church, that's truly been my anchor. And it has protected our marriage. We have a good marriage, and we actually like each other, and like we laugh with each other and we can be very open with each other. And fortunately, if I'm having a really bad day, he's not. And like we have this check system of, you know what, you go take a minute, like go, let me navigate. And I'm like, we got a tag team. I need you to come in. So if any of our listeners don't have that faith and maybe you're not at a place, I would really encourage you, start with a church. I feel like that's a connecting piece to where you can have a place to where you can worship. And I'm going to be very transparent. I would encourage you to get to a church that understands foster and adoptive kids. And
Important.
it's so important because my son, he is surrounded by a tribe that gets him.
Mhm.
And when he's told, like, this is our, because that's what we call our kids. This is our 15-year-old kid. I mean, that's just our society. It's like, how old are your kids? That's like seems to be the first thing that we always ask. How old are your kids? And I do this, unfortunately, myself. When we hear that date of birth, we automatically get oh, so do you have any girlfriends yet? And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, that little boy, he doesn't need any girlfriends. Are you kidding me? No, 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 no. So, but that would be a typical
Right.
question that if you saw
Yeah.
a 15-year-old teenage boy, well, what sports teams are you a part of? Which he is a very amazing athlete. But those would be some of the questions. And just having a place where you can get respite and where you can exhale and you can gain a source of hope,
Yeah.
peace, energy among a group of people that gets your family and that understands designing and growing a family. There's not just one way to do that. We do that in so many different beautiful ways. And so my faith personally, it I can't even find the words because it has been my source of breath and source of life. And like I said, it's protected our marriage. It's helped my older siblings or my older children understand, wait, you would have never let us do that.
Right.
Hold on.
Yeah.
We're on a different path.
Yeah.
And them understanding and respecting parenting is going to look different. And I truly believe it's because of their personal walks with God.
Yeah.
They have the grace and the love for their sibling because sometimes we are all hard to love, but sometimes when individuals are not behaving like we think they should, they're hard to love.
Yeah.
And through God, we love because He loves
Yeah. And he first loved us, right?
100%.
Yeah, I don't, and I know there's people who adopt and foster who are not believers, maybe not
Mhm.
walking with the Lord, but
Yeah.
I can't imagine surviving this journey without the Lord. He called us to it. He set our kids into our
Yes.
families, but we need, I know I need that I need my daily bread every day. I need
Oh,
my cup filled
100%.
by the Lord because it just doesn't work otherwise. And it's so hard, but the Lord helps and he walks with us and he carries our burden. So that and I think it also gives us that generational perspective, right? We're raising these children
Mhm.
and it's a generational thing, right?
Yes.
And we pray for them, and my husband and I just got we just got a book. It's the title is something like praying through the Bible for your children or for your kids.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and it's kind of like one of those 1 year through the Bible. So you're every day you're
Yes.
reading an Old Testament portion of Old Testament, then some New Testament, then a Psalm, then a proverb. We of course just got it, so we started, well, we're
Yeah.
recording this in May, but I think this will air
Right.
in June. But we just started, and we started at the beginning. We started January 1st, like that's we opened it up. Let's just go to the beginning.
Yeah.
But you read the scripture, then there's a devotional piece to it that's kind of plays on it. Like this morning, I think it had to do with. Maybe it was wisdom, right? And so pulling out from, I think it was from the Psalm, wisdom, and then just knowing, and then praying. There's a prayer that you can pray, and you can insert the names of your kid, or if you're, I
Oh,
mean,
I love
it's
that.
kind of like if you have one child, it's really easy to do, and I find that because we have 8 children, many of them are married, and we have 11 grandchildren. It's kind of like,
Right.
we just kind of say, we're lifting up our children and grandchildren because we can't.
Right.
Typically, I'll open with naming all of them, when there's time to do that, and then shorting it as we go. But it's, praying for them because, like
Yes.
you said, when you have older kids, I have older kids. My oldest biological is 36. So I
Mhm.
find my mom used to have this saying, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. And
That's so accurate.
so accurate. And it's like, and not that there's, big problems all the time, but parenting is different when you have adult kids, they're married, they have children, or,
Yeah.
and whether they're kids that came to us through adoption or they're
Yeah.
biological, there's still, you're navigating very different relationships and different dynamics. And then when you're an adoptive parent and you've got children with trauma histories, and then you've got adult biological children and grandchildren, it really, it's hard.
It
And,
is.
trusting the Lord and leaning into the Lord to help navigate all that, I could never do it without the Lord. So,
Oh, I can't either. I can't even imagine. And there was, I want to say it was probably 15 years ago, 13 years ago when I was teaching, and had this phrase of, we don't want to just survive, we want to thrive.
right, yes,
And that there, I just, again, I stumble trying to find the words because he truly is the source of hope and the source of joy. And when I was going back through school and I was reading all these science journal empirical articles specifically on brain development, and I just love seeing all the science. And then I just sit there and I smile and I'm like, yeah, that was written in the book of Psalms. Like I just like, yep, that I can like connect verses like, yeah, that's not just science. It is science because I truly believe God creates science, but it's that truth because of God. And I love that of when I not only get to share like about paces and about brain connectivity and all that, but then I can say, let me share with the scripture of why that actually works because of God,
Right.
only God.
Only God. Yeah. The science confirms what
Yeah,
God has done. So
it's
speak,
amazing.
yeah, speaking of scripture, you chose the verse that we opened with. I'll read it again.
Yes.
The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. So, Brandy, why did you choose Zephaniah 3:17?
So when our adoption journey began and we met our son, our church family threw us a very impromptu baby shower. It's funny because when the twins came along, everything was right out of a catalog. Their nursery looked pristine. When our singleton came along, I went to thrift shops. I realized I don't need a diaper baby warmer, like a baby diaper or whatever, baby wash or baby wipe warmer. There are a lot of things you realize the next go around you don't really need. And then when we got the phone call for our son, I was like, I have nothing. So we got a car seat. My friends had gifted me with a car seat. I borrowed a Moses basket from a neighbor, and those Moses baskets are amazing. If anybody's not really familiar, it's literally a very large basket, and it's made for babies, and it has a little pad inside, and you have little sheets, and then that was his crib. And I was like, I guess we're good. I've got some bottles and diapers, and like, let's go do this. And so, um, 5 days later, after we brought him home, my sweet church family, they had thrown us an impromptu shower and just loved on us and lavished us with things because we didn't have anything. And there was a couple of blankets, a couple of scriptures, and some poems, and they all had different scriptures. But then one started popping up on multiple things. And it was Zephaniah 3:17. And I thought, oh, that's very unique. And I just kind of was like, oh, that's unique. And then it was 5 months. He was 5 months. We had him for 2 months. Our journey became way more complex. It wasn't going to be a very simple adoption. There was going to be some side trails, I'll just say that. And things became very uncertain. And so I had called on a bunch of people. Like we were on multiple churches' prayer lists. Like my family had extended out. We had people literally praying across the globe. We had people all over. And Zephaniah 3:17, unbeknownst to anybody, started being the verse. People would text to me, people would call me, people would email me. And I was like, there's something with this verse. And so over his crib, I took index cards and every scripture that people would share with me, I would write out and I just pasted on the wall over his crib because if I was trying to get a couple of winks of sleep, I just wanted him surrounded by scripture. And Zephaniah 3:17 was my anchor. It truly was. I needed God to be his warrior, and God was his warrior. And God truly sang over my son, and he he's the mighty one who saves, and he truly was the warrior for my son.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I love
Yeah.
the imagery of putting the scriptures all over the wall over his crib because
It gave me so much peace because I could walk out because I mean, I told when people at the church were like, can I cuddle him? I go, absolutely, you can hold him, but you better pray over him if you're going to hold him. I mean, we knew we were fighting a battle for his life and we did, and we won, God won. And it was literally only because 100% of God and his faithfulness and I'm just so humbled. And those are the things I go back to when we're navigating the hormones right now with the teenage years. In fact, he just had his birthday and I saved every index card and I saved every prayer that anybody had ever texted or emailed me. And I made it where we have the photo books. They're
Mhm.
just filled with prayers and scriptures. And he had seen it before, but now that he's older, and so I had gifted that to him on his 15th birthday, and he goes, Mom, I've seen this. I go, I know you've seen it. However, you've got a work relationship with God now.
Mm.
And now that you're older, and he knows more about his story now than what he did, obviously, when he was 11, 10, all the years. He knows more now about it. I said, I think just reading these will be different because, and we did this with our older boys, but we've really done it intentionally with him. When he turned 9, 10, and 11, I intentionally started having conversations to let him know who is surrounding him because
Mm.
and there's even a list in his room of people we trust that he can go to because I said there's going to be a daytime and place when you're a teenager and your hormones are going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs that your brain's going to try to tell you mom and dad aren't going to understand this. I can't talk to them about this. Or my older brothers, they don't know what it's like. That's cool. We get it. Look at these people you have in your corner. These
Mm.
are all the people that are championing for you. These are the people that you could call. You could say, Can I have your phone and call Jared? I'm always going to give you my phone to call Jared. It doesn't matter, 10 o'clock at night, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. These are your people. And so when I gifted him that book, I said, I just want you to know again, you're going to see some of the same people because
Mhm.
they were with us 15
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
These are your people. And that's more of the trauma piece of because he
Mhm.
knows more about the complexity and the chaos that was surrounding him. And I just want him to know because, again, The Body Keeps Score. That's another really good book of just he may not be old enough to remember, but boy, his body remembers. And I just want him, I don't want the enemy to have any foothold over that kid there. I'm just like, no, you're not getting my son. And I don't want any of this to be used as a platform to mess with them.
Yeah,
A
because
little
it makes
mama bear coming out. So
yeah, I love it. That's okay. Um, it makes me think of identity because that's one of the areas where
yes,
the enemy does target our kids,
yes,
right? And so I just love the fact that you had all those prayers. Like he can see that when he was that tiny baby, so many people were praying for him and seeing the hand of God throughout the whole thing. God chose him. He's dearly loved. He
oh,
placed him in your family and he's
yes,
covered by all these prayers and all. So just kind of just reinforcing and reaffirming his identity in Christ and his belonging in your family. That is huge,
it's
especially with our,
huge.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And again, those teenage years with hormones, because again, even our biological children who didn't have all the stress, chaos, and trauma or drug or alcohol, they battle with identity. And that's
Yeah.
just in our human nature, especially in our American culture. So we're already navigating that. And then you throw in the complexity of brain development and just all the our broken world. I don't want him to flounder. And I just, again, the anchor that's been with me in my personal walk has been Christ. And that's what I want with him.
Yeah, amen to that. And it's funny because it's not funny. It's not really much
Yeah.
fun. But when they're 15, and I remember that with our boys because at 15 you have those raging hormones, but when you have trauma, when you have prenatal exposure, then developmentally they may be more like 8 and they're making decisions
Yes.
and they're doing things like an 8-year-old, but yet
Yes.
they have these raging hormones of a 15-year-old,
Yes.
and it makes parenting so interesting, doesn't
And
it?
then can I say I'm perimenopause too? I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh,
prayers for my husband. I mean,
yeah.
bless him. Fortunately, he is a Tigger. So like the Winnie the Pooh characters, he's happy and he's just bouncing. And I'm like, I'm so glad you're a Tigger right now because my perimenopause hormones and my son's hormones, it's like, welcome to the show. Let's see
Yeah.
what's going to be on the table today.
Oh, I can so relate, and I'm sure so many of our listeners can relate as well, Brandy. But and I feel like you and I could just sit forever and have
I
a
know.
conversation. But as we wrap up, because we do have to come to a close.
Yes.
You are a listener, so our listeners are foster and adoptive parents like us. So would you close us out with some words of encouragement for our journey?
Yes. So if you're listening to this, I would say number one, you're doing an amazing thing. Every time I've sought out somebody or a book, like how you shared about a book, there's a connected piece when you get to look in somebody else's eyes, you get to hear their voice, you get to read their words, and they get it. know their story may not be identical because, again, there are no two identical stories on this planet, but there's a level of I get it. And that alone in my walk, it still brings me hope as I'm now entering navigating parenting adult children and still now navigating a child who's in teenage years. Because even though I've parented teenage boys before, again, we're on that unique journey. And so by listening to a specific podcast, I'm going to say you're doing an incredible job because you're not only filling some questions in your heart and your maybe in your mind, but you're nourishing your soul. And so that would be my only piece of encouragement is really be mindful to fight the isolation because it's so easy to feel like nobody's going to understand this. And if I don't want to tell somebody what I'm thinking, there's nobody else thinking these horrific thoughts. I promise you, we're battling too. We're struggling. And having that tribe that you can say, I didn't like being a parent today. It was not fun. There's healing in that. And that would be my encouragement.
Yeah, it's so important, and I know I co-lead our support group, our online support group for parents of kids with FASD. And it's like, we come together 3 times a month and we'll share things and nobody's shocked with what we share,
Yeah.
right? Because we're all like, oh, I've had that or I've done that or this or that. And then, but we don't stay in that space of, we're not like they're just complaining or
Right.
venting. We share the hard, but then we're all there also to share this resource and that, Christian therapist and
Absolutely.
that, we're sharing resources and then we're praying for one another because our group is a Christian group. So, and it's an online group. Some bigger churches will have foster and adoptive parent ministries where they're meeting together in person. You definitely have to be part of a community who are parenting kids like our kids, right? Because nobody else gets it, and you don't want to get parenting advice from somebody who just operates out of traditional parenting methods because they'll tell you that
100%.
child just needs discipline, that child just needs a spanking,
Yeah.
that child just needs a consequence, and
Yeah.
and things that aren't helpful because they don't actually work with our kids. So yes, absolutely. You do not go this road alone. Do not be in isolation. You need the Lord and you need your community around you who gets it. So I love that. Thank you so much, Brandy. I
Oh, thank you.
so much.
I've been kind of pinching myself because I was very, very excited about this. So just thank you for entrusting me to be on here and just being able to talk to you live face to face. It's a joy. It truly is a joy.
Well, it's been a wonderful conversation and you brought so much to the table. And I know our listeners have just received so much through our conversation. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you for all you're doing and for sharing
Thank
your story.
you. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. That was an incredible conversation with Brandy McCombs. I'm sure that you were blessed by it. As always, I'm just so grateful for you listening to the adoption and foster care journey. I hope you were inspired and you feel encouraged by our conversation today. Of course, not only do we want to inspire and encourage you through this podcast, but also all of the resources that we have available to equip you for this parenting journey. In addition to the online and in-person workshops that I shared with you earlier in the episode, if you are raising kids with FASD, you really want to consider becoming a member of our Hope for the FASD Journey online support group. I mentioned it there at the end with Brandy because it is, I'm a co-leader of the group, but I can't wait each Tuesday night to get on the call because it's just being in that community with fellow parents who get it. So I hope that you will consider that as well. And then, of course, if you're looking for something more one-on-one, something a little more personalized, I do offer online FASD parent coaching, which you can find out. Go to our website, which is justicefororphansny.org. You would click on adoption and foster care journey to get all of the resources that I talked about today. There is a link in the show notes to make it easy for you to find it. In addition to that, please subscribe and follow this podcast whatever platform that you listen to it on. And also leave us a review if you'd be willing to do that. That helps. When you leave a review, it lets the algorithm know that this is an important podcast, and then it shows up more frequently when people are searching for podcasts about adoption or about foster care. So if you would do that, greatly appreciate it. If you would like to watch the podcast, you can go to the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel, and every podcast is available there in the video form. So you can do that as well. And let your fellow adopting and fostering friends know about the podcast and about all of our resources. Also, find us online. The Adoption and Foster Care Journey is on Facebook. And then we're also on Instagram as we're at AFC_journey. Even if you just search Adoption and Foster Care Journey Instagram, you'll find it. But follow us, like and follow those pages there. Love connecting with you. I'm so grateful that you spent your valuable time with me today. I'm thrilled to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans, and check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.